It was all a bit flat for the Bears on Sunday, who went down to a 46-4 defeat at home to Doncaster, but we won't let that get us down. We've got all the reaction and more for you right now. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bear Necessities. Yes, welcome to Bear Necessities, your podcast all about the Coventry Bears. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. You can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts and more. And we're sponsored by the Bears Vice President and York's Tim. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson. Joining me as always is my co-pilot, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm obviously a bit disappointed about the result at the weekend, but, there is some positives to take out of it.
Yes, and we will get to that later in the show. So coming up on this week's show, obviously we'll look back on Sunday's defeat to Doncaster, including hearing from head coach Tom Tsang. We've got more of your Ask Mr. C questions, and we'll have a quick chat about the long old trip to Cumbria facing the Bears this weekend. But first, a couple of things of interest you should definitely check out. So due to a problem with the printers, there was no physical programme for Sunday's match, but the Bears have still put one together and you can download it from coventrybears.com. Now, you should definitely get hold of that programme for a couple of reasons. So first of all, there's a 4-page write-up from Bears CEO Alan Robinson chronicling the season up to the Bradford game, and he's going to continue that in the next programme for the North Wales game as well. And second, in his introduction, Alan also confirmed that a bid is being put together to try and bring the Rugby League World Cup to Coventry in 2021, with the Bears working alongside the local council and WASPs to presumably get some games at the Rico. So, Craig, we saw some international rugby league at the Rico in 2016, and it was a pretty good event. I mean, we know the timings of it could have been better managed, but it worked and it got a lot of people interested in the Bears. A World Cup game or two, though, that'd be really good, wouldn't it? Yeah,
that'd be fantastic. I mean, people in Coventry will turn out for big events like that, no doubt about it. People in Coventry in the Midlands will turn out for that, and it would be brilliant for the Bears. It would be an opportunity for the Bears to raise their profile. But also good just for Coventry and the local area in terms of sport. And, the more people that watch rugby league in this area, that's good. They'll get interested in watching the Bears. But, from a selfish point of view, I'd like to be able to go to some World Cup games here locally and enjoy it. And the Rico's a great stadium. And, can you imagine a sellout Rico with a big World Cup game? That would just be amazing.
It'd be fantastic. So fingers crossed that the World Cup comes to Coventry in a few years. And as I say, get onto the Cov Bears website, download that programme and sit down and enjoy Alan's write-up of the season so far. It's definitely a good read and an interesting insight into what it takes to run this club and some of the stories that have been happening this season.
I thought it was fantastic. I actually messaged Alan just to say what a good read it was. He shows real honesty and openness, and you wouldn't get that from many CEOs out there. It's a real good read about how the season's gone and some of the challenges and the fears and everything else that goes along with that. But I think, he highlights some of the low points, but for me, it comes across certainly that this year, if you look at all the positives against all the negatives, it's been, a far more positive season than we've had before, and real progress as well, I think, in comparison to previous years.
Definitely. And his way of describing why making a tackle in rugby league is different to other forms of rugby and other contact sports is worth it alone. It's a quite magical couple of sentences to describe what defending in rugby league is like. So get on to coventrybears.com and download that programme and enjoy Alan's write-up. So we should probably talk about Sunday's game, which is mentioned earlier. The Bears lost 46-4 at home to Doncaster. To be honest, in terms of talking about the performance, it's pretty slim pickings for us. The Bears started well in the first 10 minutes, but it soon fell apart and they found themselves 30-0 down at half-time. Mixture of some dodgy-looking refereeing decisions, forward passes in particular, but also hard to escape the fact there was some sloppy, un-Bears-like defence from the home side, and it was all a bit too easy for Doncaster. Second half was an improvement. Everyone's favourite Mikey Russell going over for a score after some great Bears handling, but they weren't able to stop Doncaster also adding another 16 points before the final hooter. So as such, the Bears were left with plenty to ponder, and a couple of injuries too, to Kieran Shearer and to Jacob Ogden. So yeah, not the best day in the office. Anyway, Craig and I will chat through the game in a mo, but first, let's hear the post-match thoughts of Bears head coach Tom Tsang.
Well, Tom, kind of the game went away from you in the first half, really. It looked like a very un-Bears-like performance that first half. What do you think went wrong?
Yeah, we were just talking in the change room after the game, and I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it definitively, but for whatever reason, we didn't turn up in the first half. We were flat in the warm-up. We were flat to start the game, and really we just gave Doncaster too much respect. You know, we didn't have any particular aggression in our defence or any particular intent with it. When we were carrying the ball, we were okay coming away from our try line, but we didn't really have any sort of genuine threat or genuine shape in our attacking structure, which is disappointing, especially after sort of where we've been over the last sort of 6 weeks. I don't know whether it is a bit of a hangover from sort of the effort that we've put into the wins that we had with that combined with the lads being away, playing a lot of games. A lot of rugby has been played over the last 6 weeks, but for whatever reason we were very flat to start that first half.
What sort of thing can you say to lift the group when you're going back in half time in a situation like that? I mean, 30 points down, the game, barring a miracle, effectively gone. Is it just about restoring pride and getting back to what you've been thinking about? What sort of things did you say to them at half time? Yeah,
there's a bit of that, wanting to restore some pride. Just reminding them what their jobs are and why they're here, and it wasn't a full blown sort of hairdryer treatment, but we did give it to them a little bit at half time, and then deserved it, and because they said it themselves, that they felt that their efforts were pretty soft in some cases, and I absolutely go along with that as well. We do a lot of really hard work, and then we switch off for 30 seconds because it looks like. It might not be the case, but it looks like we're having a bit of a break and a bit of a breather, and then Doncaster can go 50-60 metres and score. And those sorts of lapses are just not good enough. Second half, when we concentrated a little bit more and we played a bit more direct and we had a bit more intent in our defence, we showed that we can be competitive. And you might look at it from the outside if you weren't here and say, oh, well, Doncaster clearly sort of tailed off and didn't put the same energy in. But I don't think they played particularly differently in the second half to the first half. And we didn't really change that much, other than we just had a bit more desire and a bit more urgency in everything we did, and it kept it close in the second half. And that showed that if we'd have done that from the first minute and carried that through for 80 minutes, it would have been a much closer game. Yeah, Doncaster, sort of on the balance, they probably are a better team than us, and they deserve the win, I'd say, but it could have been a hell of a lot closer. Yeah,
and they don't. I agree, Doncaster a better team on the day, and probably a better team than the Bears this season, but at the same time, they don't feel that far away from you. Do you feel like that next level within the league structure is getting closer each week?
Yeah, I do. I think we've proven to ourselves on numerous occasions that we can compete at this level, and I've said it before, we can compete at this level in patches, and we're now proven that we compete against good teams for 80 minutes. Beating Keighley, who are a very good team. I know they've had some troubles, but they are still a very good team, and we managed to get the win. Scholars, they're a very good team, well coached, and we got the win. And we've proven that we can do that. Now is how do we make that a consistent thing that we can sort of work ourselves up to, and I guess that's part of the learning. Another different angle of the learning process is not just sort of turning up when you know that you're completely up against it, and you just sort of throw caution to the wind and have a go. It's when the sort of the expectation slightly turns, can you still keep that desire going? And like I say, that's probably the most disappointing thing about today, is that we didn't have that in the first half. We did have it in the second half, and it showed how close we could have been. But we know that we've got a hell of a lot of work to do, but we know that whatever effort we put in is going to get we're going to get that back with rewards by being able to be proud of our performances.
A couple of players went off injured during the game today, so you lost Jacob Ogden in the first half and Kieran Sherritt went off in the second half. Have you got any updates on their injuries?
Yeah, Jacob came off with an ankle injury. He was hobbling around on it. He wanted to carry on, but it wasn't the right thing, so we brought him off. It's probably sort of a 1 to 2 week thing. It could be back for next week, but we just need to see. I don't think it's anything that's going to keep him out for too long of a time. Kieran is a bit of a dodgy one. It's a groin injury, a little groin pull. We don't want to make it worse because they can, with soft tissue injuries, they can be made worse if you bring someone back too early. So we'll be quite cautious with him, but it'll be a big loss for us.
Did Jacob's injury in particular affect your game plan at all? Because looking with Mikey Russell on the bench and looking at who else you had in the interchanges, I was kind of guessing you were going to bring Mikey on more in that dummy half position, but obviously you ended up with him at fullback and Jason going into the centres. Did that mess with the plan at all?
Yeah, it did. I mean, you never really want outside backs to get injured and have to come off. You don't really count. Well, you sort of have a contingency in your mind if that does happen, but you don't really want it. Like, you never want it to happen. So yeah, it did disrupt things a little bit, but it just meant that, like you said, Mikey went to full-back, Jess went to centres. They're both excellent in those two positions. They both played a lot of that in those positions. Where it did impact us is it meant that Liam had to play the rest of the half at 9, and he had a good dig there, and he was quite brave with some of his steps, having played a lot. Some big boys running at him, and then it also meant that we had obviously fewer interchanges to play with when we had two fit players who were both props that we could rotate around in the second half. So I think that also sort of makes that second half all the more impressive again, that we were able to dig out a really competitive 40 minutes with those sort of changes to the lineup and with two fewer players fit and healthy, and also a couple of guys on the field were having to obviously do more work as a result of that. So it's just disappointing that we couldn't have applied ourselves in the first half and made a bit of a closer game of it.
And looking ahead to next week, obviously it's one of the longest trips of the year, going up to Cumbria for what's going to be another tough afternoon. Are those long trips, are they something where you encourage the players to just switch off and not think about where they're going to, or is that coach journey an important time to start mentally preparing for the game, because it's a long time to prepare for in the trips to Cumbria, isn't it? Yeah,
I think we just try and leave it up to the players to try and manage themselves. They know what their preparation is best. We can give them some advice in terms of sort of when the timings of when to eat and things like that, and what they should be eating. We'll try and make some scheduled stops so we can get them out and stretch the legs and have a bit of a run around, and so then break the journey up a little bit. But in terms of focus, different players will need to be focused right from the minute they wake up, and that's just game day for them. Some of them take a little bit longer to warm up to it on a game day, but I think most of the work will need to go in on Tuesday night and on Thursday night when we're at training, Wednesday night when we're at training, to really focus them in on the job that we've got at hand. Workington are a top team. They're always even better at home. Maybe because of the journey, I don't know, but they're always it's a very tough place to go, is Workington. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but we know what we're in for, and we know where we need to improve, so we just need to make sure that we give a good account of ourselves.
Well, good luck for the trip, and I'll speak to you again next week.
Thanks, Dave.
So huge thanks to Tom, as always, for joining us on the show. The great Tom said it himself there, that the Bears' performance was a bit flat on Sunday. He noticed it was even flat in the warm-up, and we both said ourselves after the game that the defence and the kicking game were both sort of well below the level we've been used to from the Bears this season. Now you've had a bit of time to digest the game. What do you think about what we saw on Sunday?
I think at half time I spoke to a few people, and I wouldn't change my opinion on that. And the one thing that I said to everyone: where's the intensity from the previous weeks gone? Mm-hmm. You know, where's the aggression in defence and taking the ball up? Where's the structure taking the ball up? It was it was a strange half, because, you know, the Bears, I thought they'd really be gunning for Doncaster, and whether or not it's all the games that the guys have played or some other issue that impacted them. They have played a lot of games in the last few weeks, but maybe that opening day defeat to Doncaster, which was quite a heavy defeat, maybe that was playing on players' minds. I don't know, but just didn't seem at it really. They, I think it was. We've got used to in recent weeks good performances at home, and the bar has been raised really. And a sort of what I would say after the second half performance, this might have been a game 2 or 3 months ago we'd have been going, well, it was a good fighting second half performance, and there's lots of positives to take out of it, and things are moving in the right direction and so on, and we would have probably seen it in a positive way. So, and I was reading on Twitter, Rachel Presley, who's Ben's auntie, said if this performance had been 2 months ago, we would have been saying about speaking about it in a positive way. So it shows the progress that's been made on the pitch, that we can look at a performance like that and be disappointed. Saying that, though, the second half was much better. It was a real fighting performance in the second half. The only disappointment for me in the second half is that they had quite a few opportunities to score and should have got more. And it would have been nice if they could have won the second half in terms of points scored, but they didn't quite do it. There was a couple of nice thrilling runs down the wing that the Bears weren't able to finish off, and some good individual performances as well. But it's just one of those. I think this league is so tough because you have to be at it week in, week out. You can't afford to let your let something drop, because if your performance is not at 100% every week, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And Doncaster, let's just say Doncaster are an excellent team, and a couple of their tries were absolutely phenomenal. Not helped by the officials though, and I'm not blaming the referee here, because he's got two linesmen that should be letting him know if those passes are forward. I can't say with any certainty, but there was 3 tries scored where there looked to be 50-50 decisions to be made, and they all went Doncaster's way, which is a bit unusual for me. But again, that's not to say Doncaster weren't the better team. They probably would have won it overall, but I think the Bears could have really pushed them close if they'd been properly on their game.
I think that was the most disappointing thing for me, was that it was a chance to see the Bears against one of the teams that many people have been tipping as promotion dark horses from this league, and the Bears' performance was such that we've seen at other points in the season that they could have given them a much closer game. They could have been much closer to them on the day, and it was just it almost felt like Doncaster didn't have to play that well to come away with the win on Sunday, which was a bit of a shame. But like you were saying earlier, and like Rachel put on Twitter, the fact that we can be disappointed at a score that people who don't watch the Bears every week would look at and would have just expected, that does show some sort of progress, even if it does sound like we're clutching at straws a little bit in terms of trying to find some positives from this. But it was just it's that word, isn't it? It was flat. There was just it was flat pretty much all over, particularly that first half, and they were never going to claw it back from that point down.
No, but credit to them, they could have let their heads drop and lost, 60-0 or something, but they come out fighting in the second half and give it a real good go. So that does show that there is real desire and heart and fight within the squad, and they just need to be doing it for 80 minutes. We've seen a few times this season where they've managed to compete with teams for a half or for 60 minutes. More recently, they've managed to do it for 80 minutes, and they just need to up the levels again to try and get back to that.
Yeah.
But there was some good individual performances as well. I mean, I was very impressed with Liam Rice-Wilson, who ended up pretty much playing the whole game, and he was so tenacious in his defence. I mean, he made lots of tackles around the ankles, taking people down. Going forward as well, he really worked hard, and he had a tough day. I mean, he was up against some big old Doncaster pack. So he did really, really well. Mikey again. What can you say about Mikey? He's when he's got the ball, something's going to happen, and he made a couple of breaks. Cam made some good breaks as well. There's a lot of players there that put in a good second half performance.
Yeah, and Cameron Stewart again, very impressive considering it's only is it his second or third game at this level. An 18-year-old lad from Leicester, he's exactly the reason why things like the Midlands Academy it's a crime that it's been shut down, because he's proof that he can cut it at this level, and he's only a couple of games in, and he gave the Bears a lot of go forward in that second half, and that aggression that was lacking in defence in the first half in particular, he really brought that in the second half, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was great, and someone who was sat near me said, "Who's this guy coming on?" Because he hadn't seen him play before, and I was like, "Yeah, he's an 18-year-old from Leicester," and he was like, "What?" Yeah. Because he was probably pummeling people in defence, and again, going forward, he was aggressive. When you put young players that age in this particular league, quite often, they're not used to physicality. They don't enjoy it. They find it difficult to adjust to it. He looked like he was reveling in it, and that's a real good sign about his promise in the future.
Definitely so.
And Peter Ryan as well. Again, I was, every time I see him, I'm impressed with him. I thought he was excellent again when he came on and added a bit of aggression in the second half as well. So, there was one or two missing, I think, that made a bit of a difference as well.
I was going to say it's worth bearing in mind players like Zach Williams and Malachi Lloyd Jones were missing as well. And Dante in the back. So the backs were pretty strong actually. It was a pretty solid back line. I thought Reece Rance looked good on his comeback from injury, but he was good at bringing the ball out of defence. He made plenty of meters, didn't he? He's
a very, very good player, and considering that he would have been a bit rusty, he looked very, very sharp. And he's definitely one to look out for in the future. It's just a shame that he hasn't got more game time this year, because I think he would have been coming into his own around this time, and really hitting top form. But it just shows you that when called upon, there is very good players in the squad, and the squad has coped well with injuries on the whole this year. When you look at most games where there's in some weeks there's been 5 or 6 missing through injury, and the squad's coped really well with it. So and no one's ever looked out of place when they've come into the team. So I'm choosing to look on the positives from the game. It is a disappointment because I think the second half in particular showed that had they really been on their game, they would have given Doncaster a good go. But that it is what it is, and we can only look at the second half and see how much they improved there. And once again, the fans appreciated the effort put in.
Yes. Well, I think overall, definitely one to put behind us, I think. So we'll leave it there. Well done to Doncaster, and look forward to giving them a bit of a closer game next season, assuming they don't get promoted. Anyway, we'll move on now, because I reckon it's time for Ask Mr. C. Right, this is Ask Mr. C, part of the show where I put your questions to my co-host, and is sponsored by York's Tim, for which we're very grateful. If you've got something you'd like to ask Craig on a future episode, then don't be shy. Email us a question using the contact form at covbearspodcast.com, or tweet it to @covbearspodcast and use the hashtag AskMrC. So a few questions for you this week, Craig, starting off with one from me. What did you think of Paul Emanuele's new haircut? Well, which we should describe to listeners was basically a number 1 all over, wasn't it?
Yeah, a classic buzz cut. Yeah, which he's normally got quite styled hair, hasn't he? So to see him with no hair was quite amusing. But I understand it was done for charity.
Yes.
And he had half his head shaved off. There is pictures on Twitter of him getting it done in the process of getting it done. So yeah, fair play to him for doing it. I would warn him, though, that I once did a charity head shave, and ever since then, my hair's been falling out, and I'm now completely bald. So just keep an eye on it, Paul.
That doesn't feel right. Like, in terms of karma, it feels like the opposite should happen, surely.
I think I was probably going bald beforehand and just hiding it, and then it became very obvious once my head was shaved that there was bald patches there. So.
Well, I guess we'll wait and see what happens with Paul. But as you say, congratulations to him for actually taking the plunge and braving the shave in aid of charity. It's always great when people do that. So next question, regular question asker here, Fatboy Rob. He's asking you, Craig, have you ever considered coaching?
Well, I did many years ago. I did help out for a while with Bears Juniors, doing a bit of coaching with them. And I quite enjoyed it, but it did get, I think coaching is one of the hardest jobs in the world. And I would say that I would probably enjoy it, but my knowledge of the game is not good enough to be able to do it at any sort of level. If there was, say, local amateur teams based in and around Coventry, then, it'd be nice to give it a crack and give it a go. But, I think I'll probably give it a miss, I think. I think Tom does a fantastic job, considering the number of years he's been with the Bears now, and he's still young as well. He's done a brilliant job, but I don't think I could cope with the stress week in, week out. It'd be a bit too much for me, I think.
And you wouldn't be able to enjoy a couple of beers while you're watching the game like you do as a fan either. So, yeah,
I'm sure there is some coaches out there who have a cheeky while they're on the touchline, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. And I wouldn't enjoy the games either. It must be very, very stressful.
Yeah, I bet it is. And last question this week comes from Tim Griffiths, who perhaps wanting us to help him out with his own job, but he wants to know, what should Mikey Russell's try music be? And of course, Tim is our stadium announcer extraordinaire. So what do you reckon? What tune should we bang out every time Mikey Russell puts the ball down over the line?
Well, I think the obvious one's probably Simply the Best, Tina Turner, but it's a bit too obvious. I think an Irish theme has got to be the way to go, and I've come up with two. One band's not really properly Irish, but the first one would be The Boys Are Back in Time by Thin Lizzy, one of my favourite songs, and pretty apt because, he pops back to play every now and then. And then the other one, just to give the crowd something to do every time he scores, House of Pain, Jump Around.
Yes.
So either one of those, I think, would suit it nicely.
I like the Thin Lizzy vibe. You could also have the intro riff to Jailbreak. That's quite a good spiky one.
I actually, thinking about this, I went through a bit of I listened to quite a few Thin Lizzy songs on Sunday night, just thinking about it. So yeah, it's anything by Thin Lizzy would do nicely.
Yeah, I was having a think as well. I know it's Ask Mr. C, but I was also having a think because it was an intriguing question. The ones that jumped to my head were, "Oops, I Did It Again," or just that bit of the Foo Fighters All My Life where he's saying done, on to the next one. It's kind of, Mikey Russell sees an opposition, scores, done, on to the next one. But I like your Thin Lizzy idea more. I think that's more fitting. So yeah, there you go.
I was thinking Silent Running by Mike and the Mechanics as well. Yeah, it's a bit of a slow. It's not. I don't think it's up tempo enough. But yeah, I thought that would be another quite good one.
Yeah. Thin Lizzy and Jump Around. Like it. It's good. Anyway, that's it for this week in terms of Ask Mr. C questions. Don't forget, if you've got something you'd like to ask Craig on a future episode, email us a question using the contact form at our website or tweet it to us and I will ask it to him. And thanks as ever to York's Tim for sponsoring this section. Okay, we're almost done for another show, but before we leave, we should have a quick chat about this weekend's task facing the Bears. A very long journey up to Cumbria to face a very good Workington side. So, Craig, this is potentially the toughest away game of the season, I think, because the combination of the distance involved and the fact that Workington have very much found their form of late. 7 wins from the last 8, and of course they beat Bradford earlier in the year. This, I know we seem to say it every week, but this one really is not going to be easy at all, is it?
No, I think it's 6 hours on the coach. So,
wow.
There's probably be 2 stops on the way up on that. And then, so you're setting off early, probably having to get up earlier than you normally do, and then sitting on a coach for 6 hours. And then you have to get ready, mentally prepared for the game and get on the pitch in, well, I don't know what the conditions are going to be like, but looking at the forecast, it's probably going to be raining as well. So, Cumbria is a difficult place to go, and all the Cumbrian teams all have good home records. I mean, it's basically kept Barrow pretty much in the championship this year is their home record. And Whitehaven and Workington are always difficult places to go. So it will be tough. And as you say, Workington are on a good run of form. But who knows? Who knows? The Bears, we know the Bears have got a performance in them. I think they just need to forget about the last couple of games, go up there with optimism, try and get some of that spirit that they had, for the Keighley game and give it a good go, because you never know, if Workington take them lightly and don't put in the performances that they have done of late, then the Bears have got a chance.
And hopefully we won't suffer the same referee as the last time the Bears played Workington, because that was a shambles, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to mention names, but I'm pretty certain it's the same referee that it wasn't Leon Price. I know Leon Price has had a bit of a whinge about referees in the last couple of months. I think it was Craig Lingard of Keighley had a massive blowout about the referees, and it was the same ref that refed against Workington earlier in the season. So the poor guys had quite a bit of criticism this season. So,
and based on what we've seen, rightly so, I think.
Yeah.
Not that we want to criticise refs, but when they're that bad, they deserve a bit of stick.
I think so. I think the main thing for me, though, is that the RFL, the person representing the referees in League One, I can't remember his name offhand, but they need to be listening to concerns raised by clubs, because managers and coaches will get frustrated if they're not being listened to, and the referees are not going to improve if they're not given the support that they need to improve their performances. So, they need to listen and they need to act upon feedback, because then you end up with coaches giving outbursts, getting fines and whatever else they get, and that doesn't really solve the issue at all.
No, you're absolutely right, and it doesn't reflect well on the sport either. It just makes it look like they're all out to get the refs, which of course they're not. So, fingers crossed for a good performance and a good result from Cumbria this weekend. And then, of course, another fairly long trip the weekend after, because the Bears get to go down to West Wales before they have a weekend off, where everyone can go and watch the Challenge Cup. So we'll be back again next week to let you know how it all goes in Cumbria. Don't forget, we live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at Covbears Podcast on Twitter. You can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, plenty of other places as well. And we're sponsored by Bears Vice Presidents and York's Tim. Craig, thanks as always, and I will catch you next week.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.